Gun stores across the country are saying there's a phenomenon called AR burnout. And personally, I have observed that ARs are not flying off the shelves like they used to. Back in the panic buying moment, ARs were on back order. If you wanted to get an AR, you had to back order it. Today, I'm on the shelf, walk in, buy it, and walk out. Or if not, reserve it for the waiting period in the so-called States. Actually, what's happening is they're not flying off the shelves as fast, so corporate America, a slowdown in sales means a loss in sales. But assuming that there is a fall off in AR burnout, you would think us scout rifle types are going, yeah, all right, get a scout rifle. Not so fast. The late Colonel Cooper, inventor of the scout rifle, believed that we should be an armed society. An armed society is a polite society. Sayings. So when he envisioned developing a concept called the scout rifle, you would envision he was going to have some kind of Volksgewehr, people's rifle. In the decades he spent developing the scout rifle concept, he finally came up to where Steyr was going to manufacture a scout. In his column, the late Colonel warned it will not be cheap. That stern warning did little to soften the sticker shock. The Steyr Scout came out, it retailed for $2,600 in 1990 dollars. Now, as much as I respect the Colonel, I was not going to spend this much on his beloved rifle. The only other scout rifle that went into production before the late Colonel passed on was Savage. Savage came out with their 10 FCM for $550 back then. I jumped on it. With all due respect to the late Colonel, I'm not going to spend that much on a rifle. So what essentially came out was not a Toyota Tacoma. It was more of a Tesla Cybertruck or a Rivian. Ironically, Savage, Ruger, and Mossberg, their production scouts, could well be a people's rifle. They were competitively priced with the AR. But the late Colonel was silent on the subject of these other production scouts. Well, the only other one was, of course, the Savage. It was only fairly recently, after doing a lot of research, the late Colonel took one look at Savage's rendition of the Scout, tossed it over his shoulder, and said, cheap copy. So, because of the Colonel himself, the production scouts did not catch on. Another incident or story goes that the late Colonel was talking to someone who signed up for his scout rifle class. He brought the Springfield Scout. And the late Colonel scoffed and said, that's not a Scout. Here, take one of my prototypes and take it to class instead. So the late Colonel did not envision his scout rifle as America's rifle. Quite to the contrary, he envisioned a rifle as an investment. Something right below your house and your car. Well, if we talk about arming the unarmed, if we're talking about warfare, if you can't afford to lose it, you can't afford to use it. The AR-15 can be described as the tactard trend. My own personal description of this current trend is I call it the second wannabe wave. The first wannabe wave was back in the 80s. Now, it really wasn't the first, but it was the first I personally experienced. And back in the 80s, the first wannabe wave or tactard trend was what are called assault nines. These were civilian legal versions of the Uzi, MAC-10, Tech-9, and other machine pistols or submachine guns. And these were quite literally tactard toys. They could shoot no more accurately than a pistol, had no better range than a pistol, some actually worse than a pistol, and they were more fun toys for hosing off hillsides. But A broken clock is right at least twice a day, and when the AR became the latest tactard trend, it kind of sort of hit the bullseye. One of the reasons people are getting bored with the AR is that it works so well. Well, how can something that the late Colonel describes as a poodle shooter work so well? We're talking about arming the unarmed here. Most panic buyers or people seeking to arm themselves are not looking to become firearms enthusiasts. They want the equivalent of a first aid kit, not a paramedic's field pack. The equivalent of a simple household toolkit, not a full mechanic's rollaway. In this area, the AR excels quite well. If you are someone looking to simply defend the homestead and your range does not go beyond the property line of the average suburban home, it would be very difficult to argue that an AR or some other semi-auto carbine is the best tool for the job. There are very few tools that can supersede it. The only weapon competing with the semi-auto carbine for home defense would be the shotgun. So, if you had 3 intruders and you needed to repel them, pretty hard to beat. The scout rifle was never meant to compete with a semi-auto carbine or shotgun as the premier home defense weapon. Adequate or good enough if you decided not to add the shotgun or carbine to your defense arsenal. The scout rifle community does not really seek to make the scout rifle the new American rifle. In fact, Richard Mann, author of the book The Scout Rifle Study, he decries the tactardish features that the production scouts have. The flash hider, a more tactical look on the coloring and styling of the stock, and the extended round magazine. One could imagine how much more tactardish the scout rifle would become if it became the new America's rifle. There are only 2 valid reasons for trading in your semi-auto carbine for something like a scout rifle, or for that matter, any other general purpose utility rifle, non-semi-automatic utility rifle. Number one reason would be a legally restricted environment. Even here in the blue state of California, the scout rifle is yet to be on the radar of the anti-gunners. You can be one step ahead of this legally restricted environment by getting a blue state AR. The shark fin grip with the 10-round magazine. But sooner or later, you're only one step ahead. You can go 2 steps ahead by going to a Thorson stock, or a Mini 14, or some other more sporty-looking semi-auto. To be 3 or more steps ahead of the curve, a scout rifle or some other non-semi-auto general-purpose utility rifle would be the way to go. My advice to AR owners here in the blue state of California is to get what Cooper called the Poodle Scout. It's a scout rifle in .56. If you get Mossberg's Poodle Scout after your quote-unquote tragic boating accident, you not only find a home for your ammo, but also your magazines as well, because the Mossberg Poodle Scout will take your AR magazines. Another alternative would be to build a scout rifle out of the Ruger All-American. It too will find a new home for your AR magazines after your tragic boating accident. Now, the All-American does not take the long eye relief scope, but with the passing of the late Colonel Cooper, there's a very strong debate as to whether to allow the LVPO, or low power variable optic conventional scope, and the red dot to be on the approved list as an alternative to the long eye relief scope. If you want to add an AR to your collection if you have a scout rifle, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, many of the scout rifle advocates, one of the reasons they remain traditional with their scout rifles is because it is not their go-to weapon for that bump in the night. The likes of Richard Mann and other scout rifle gurus, if you were to break into their house, you are far more likely to get a chest full of 5.56 from an AR than you are .308 from their scout rifles, even though they are the #1 gurus. So if you are in a blue state and you want to be ahead of the legally restricted environment, a .308 Scout added to your collection, or a Poodle Scout to find a home for your magazine ammunition is a viable alternative. The second reason one might replace their AR with a scout rifle is if you are truly bored with it. You don't have the range or hitting power of a full power rifle. So once you've mastered your AR, mastering the full power rifle becomes like getting a higher belt in martial arts. So those are the only two reasons one might wish to trade in their AR or semi-auto carbine for something like a scout rifle. Hope we cleared things up. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.